Well, welcome to our very interesting web meeting, and I think this is a very crucial time to meet because we have just had an announcement saying that June 8th is the day on which we will actually be allowed to open our hotels. But after that, of course, there's been a lot of clarification, and we'll get into that later. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about our segment that we are looking at. So the segment that we're looking at is the mid-scale and the economy hotels, and everybody around the world are unanimous in saying that this is the kind of segment which is going to do business first before the luxury hotels really start making some level of progress. So we are going to talk about what's going to happen in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, because though June 8th is the opening for the central government, a lot of state governments have pushed back opening for hotels in their states. So we have to really look into the intricacies of all the detailing. And what I'm going to do is, because I'm in the background, I am going to be tossing my question to Mr. Ajay Bakaya, who is the MD and CEO of Sarovar Hotels, and who is the senior leader of this panel. And then he will toss again to Deepika Rao, who is the MD and CEO of Ginger Hotels, which is also a big player. Then she tosses to Samir MC, who is the CEO of Fortune Hotels, also a big player in the mid-scale and economy. And then Samir tosses to Nikhil. Nikhil is he's the CEO, and he is the director in charge of uh, Eurasia. So that's bigger than India, but a lot of the hotels from Wyndham is in India. And then from there, we go to Suhail. Suhail is the CEO of Fern Hotels. And then we move to the director of IBIS in India, Silver. So this today's session has been sponsored by Bonison, and Bonison has over 35 years of turnkey engineering solutions for professional kitchens, and they proudly offer made in India product solutions for the majority of applications required in commercial kitchens, using state-of-the-art design to deliver the best-in-class operational and ergonomic efficiency. I think I've already introduced my panel. So while this is on, let me ask my first question to Mr. Ajay Bakaya, who is the Managing Director of Sarovar Hotels and Resorts. Ajay, let's begin with the importance of June 8th and what we do from here on.
Thank you, Bikram. Thank you very much. And welcome all our audience. It would have been great if we could see each other, but at least you can see us. So that's one part of it. June 8th is a welcome step. At least it's a step forward. And we all know that sooner rather than later, we are going to be able to open most of our hotels. Yes, we will spend the next week or two, perhaps a little bit more on clarity whether all states are following the June 8 parameter. At the moment, it appears that Bengal is not, Punjab is not, Maharashtra certainly is not, and there may be some others who are still in that process of deciding. So I think it's let's assume if it's not 8, it's 10, 15, 20, whatever. But very soon we are in a position to start welcoming guests back into our hotels. And what it really means is that all the training that we put in place over the last 2 months or so, all the processes that we've exercised again and again and again, all the training to employees on how to keep themselves safe and keep the guests safe, all the running around of sales and marketing on getting that pie of the business or part of the pie, part of the small pie that's going around for business comes into play. So it's exciting to know that we are back on track. It will be some time before we approach a normal or a new normal. But I think it's good timing that we have the green signal and we're ready to move forward. Deepika, let me bring you in on your thoughts, not just on June 8, but how Ginger is perceiving the next few months. How do you see things? And is this a great step forward, Deepika?
Thanks, Ajay. So to share a little bit about us, I think you asked me about the next 3 months. So I'm sure all of us on this panel are experiencing this. There are certain sectors which are opening up ahead of the others. So especially properties where we're close to SEZs, industry beds, we are seeing opening up that's happening there, led by sectors like FMCG, pharma, and IT. I think these three I can broadly speak about, where we've seen where there's business coming in for calibration of plants to setting up their factories. So you have to map your whole network and overlay it with where you see economic activity beginning. And I suppose each of us must be doing that and taking calls in terms of partially opening, fully opening those properties, Ajay. So the way I see it is we do have some lot of our hotels which are operational currently, partly because we are like again most of us we are servicing quarantine business right now, whether it was through the repatriation business or even to that. Also, a lot of medical fraternity, again, as a part of the Tata Group initiative and the support that the Tata overall are providing as COVID support during these times. Ginger is also playing its role in terms of association with hospitals, and we rooms for medical fraternity. That is a large share of the current guest inflows with hotels right now. Next 3 months, I think we'll overlay this economic activity with locations of our hotels, and we've already done that, and we have some plans in place as to what's the quantity of inventory we will open up these hotels with. We did have a situation where a lot of our teams, those who were outstationed, could not go back home. So we felt more prudent to keep them in-house. So reopening is something which will be fairly easy because we do have most of our hotels with some of our staff housed in there. So that's our current situation, Ajay. And maybe with that, I'll bring Sameer in. Hi, Sameer. So,
Thank you for bringing me
Sameer,
on.
I was thinking of, since I have you as an opportunity to ask you a question, I wanted to check
Sure.
with you. You do have a large footprint of yours in Western India, as I understand, and Southern India. So are you seeing different approaches, let's say, versus maybe hotels with more chains that may not be, you're fairly concentrated in West and South. Any difference in your approach with that kind of network spread?
So I think if I look at after hearing the most dreaded word lockdown for a long time, we are finally hearing unlock 1.0. So it's definitely sounding a lot better than lockdown 5.0. And as we all know, there is definitely a lot of intent which is being shown to help most of the industries back on track. Clearly, we are probably the last to get in on after all the consumer essentials and the production linked businesses. So very similar to what you said, I think as we were mapping out what will come up first, very similar, we identified that there would be essential travel coming up, especially related to production. So in most places where there are factories, most of these companies will want to get travel back. Of course, a lot of our clients also told us very similar. And as you mentioned, with the properties we have in the West and the South, we are seeing that trend already in terms of wanting to get back. Of course, that is hampered by the challenge with some states, whether it's Maharashtra, Telangana is still unsure. So I guess we'll only hear on the 6th or 7th whether they actually start allowing hotels to operate, etc. So I think by and large, we are also on the same pattern. We are seeing hotels closer to the industrial belts seeing potential of opening faster, getting business through essential travel first, which will probably be followed by most other segments. I guess what's visible here is that there is definitely still a bit of unpredictability. And if you ask the pessimist, he will say we are still in lockdown, everything is bad, we don't know what's happening. The optimist will say come June 8th, everything is going to come back to normal. I'm sure hoteliers have got used to being a lot more pragmatic and look at it with a balanced lens. We know there is going to be a bit of stop, start sort of momentum before we really get back to track. I guess it will be a huge learning curve starting 8th of June. While that date is great to hear, we will have to, of course, evaluate it location by location and state by state. So I'm guessing that all of us are already on to it. So as we in Fortune have started getting our general managers to look at their locations, we are working with them to try and understand who gets to start the operations first. So I'm sure everybody else is doing the same, and that's probably going to be the big one to start off with. So I think I'll bring in Nikhil at this moment. Nikhil, probably if you would want to add, how are you going to look at the business coming in, given that you are an international chain, and of course you have a fair amount of business coming in from international channels, but given that there will be a lot of business which is domestic driven, what are you going to do in the next few months?
Thanks, Amir. A fair question. With the boundaries closed, there's going to be very little of international travel coming in, right? The opportunity is the 28 million that was outbound and converting that into inbound. That said, on the corporate side, I think RFPs are going to be at the same price point that they were last year. There is going to be traction from airlines. There is traction from IT, pharma, banking, and that's exactly what Deepika, you and Mr. Bakaya were speaking of. I think I'm the optimist here. So if I was to just look at what's really happening around with more than 6,000 hotels in the US, 96% of them are open and garnering very good occupancy levels. And if you were to look at Southeast Asia, of course, they were better prepared because they had the experience of SARS and we didn't have the experience of SARS. But if you were to look at the market that you operated in South Korea earlier, and we have a considerable presence, it's seeing weekends and staycation spike month on month, week on week for the last 3 months. If you were to look at China, at the moment, there is no two ways about it. Mid-scale and budget hotels have already started touching 60s and across the country. And luxury, which was at about 20-25%, has caught up to about 40% in terms of occupancy in China. So from that perspective, I think business is going to look up. Yes, start, stop, Nike swoosh, the W's, and we can keep debating all the economic cycles, but this segment is going to see that pick up. I mean, you look at the Indigo flights, there is no social distancing. With malls and cinema halls going to open up very soon, I'm sure this is going to be a thing of the past. That's my two pieces. Let me bring in Suhail. Suhail, as a management company, you've had a considerable amount of ups and downs in the COVID period. Talk to us about how you've handled the owners, how are you targeting the business, and a little bit about the experience you were telling me about one hotel where you had COVID patients coming in and the hotel team members didn't want to work, and what was the human experience there? You kind of got them motivated and to do the job. So how did you do all that?
Oh, thanks, Nikhil. So effectively, being a management company, it is corresponding with, you've got all the employees that are there across the portfolio, as well as all the different developers that are there across the portfolio. We went into this crisis with the thought process that, look, we're not going to be even cutting salaries. Okay, thinking that this is going to be a short-term story and bounce back is going to happen within 3 months. Looking forward, I don't think that's going to be a realistic scenario. It's already come to a phase where we are looking that, at least start off with unpaid leave. We do not want to get into a position where we're letting go of many people, but we are starting with unpaid leave just to, ensure that the operations are still viable in the hotels. While June 8th, the hotels may have got permission to open, but business in hotels is not going to pick up till the uncertainty that is there around this entire crisis. The uncertainty on travel between districts is not going to go away immediately. Only once all those things are settled will inter-district, interstate travel start, and that's when hotels will really start to see momentum building. There is small local movement, but it's not enough to sustain hotels. In terms of how we handled hotels with COVID patients, so we do have a few hotels which are currently being utilized for quarantine purposes. So those are non-positive quarantined guests. We also do have a few hotels that are being handled as care centers. So these are asymptomatic COVID positive patients that are being kept in the hotels. The interaction between staff and guests is extremely minimal in the COVID care setup. even the food is outsourced. There is, if there is any staff interacting with a guest, he's in a complete PPE kit. That being said, there's always a risk when you're operating in this kind of a scenario. So far, we've been lucky when no employee has tested positive, but that's not an assurance that we can live with. Bringing in Sylvain, I think going forward, there is a challenge with regards to really pushing up corporate business, and rates is going to become one of the biggest question marks. Are hotels going to hold rates? Are they going to drop rates? What is your approach on this subject?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in the end, so I need to resume a bit of everybody before to relaunch the point. I think the unlock, as you were saying, Samir, and me, I'm part of the optimistic people. The unlock 1.0 cannot be matching better with hospitality when we are managing keys all the time. So having this information, reopening the hotel on 8th, we know that there will be different speed. We are talking all around in different panel about like a pre-opening hotels. So we are really on this phase, having different speed, different states. When Nikhil is talking about Asia Pacific, when we see China with in advance compared to us, when we see the rest of Asia Pacific, we know that we are learning with the previous, and finally we are preparing for the next. So as Deepika was saying also, we managed to operate hotels finally with different type of business, not necessarily corporate like usual, but all our quarantine, all our COVID patients, talking about stranded passengers, evacuation of embassies. So I think during the coming weeks, we will continue a bit on this kind of business, and no surprise on this, but we can start to see, and already on the previous lockdown 3.0, there was before 4.0, already some companies was asking if you are reopening, can we come? And we know that some small groups, some transit will start to come in our properties. So I think we have prepared during the past 2 months, and I want to bring back to Ajay this point. We will have probably a few weeks more. We will learn from the great massive advantage that we got with all this quarantine business, because we have been facing really the virus, then the protection for the team and for the guests directly. So Ajay, for your hotels, what means preparation? How you handle the challenge, being focusing, being ready 8th or end of June for all the properties in the same time?
You know, we need to understand one truth. The largest business, the biggest chunk of business over the next 3 to 6 months is going to be COVID or COVID related. And so we're going to take a call whether we're going to deal with that business or not. And certain hotel owners, in our case, are saying, sorry, I don't want to do that business at all. I'll only go with pure regular business, but nothing to do with COVID. But the fact is that COVID related, whether it is isolation, whether it is doctors, is going to be a large chunk. And if you're going after that large chunk, we need to have certain clarity. Hotels that are dealing with doctors, nurses, caregivers on a regular basis, and hotels that are, let's say, 60, 70, 80 rooms or below a single tower block, will really have to take a big decision that they can only do that business and not mix it with any other business, because your guests want to know who else is staying in the same hotel. And while you can practice all your safety protocols, the mental hesitation or the mental block for a guest staying in a hotel where you're taking in doctors who are exposed to the virus 24/7 is difficult. So that's one major call. If you leave aside the doctors and caregivers, then you have the self-isolation guys on quarantine, and you have cases like I was on a call half an hour ago where somebody said, look, I need 20 rooms for 14 days. We are a large back office processing company. We've hired new agents. We have 25 of them, but I can't take them back into the office straight away. I can't take them to the office. They're new. I want them in isolation for 2 weeks, so I know they're safe. Then take them to my office. So there's going to be a lot of that business too. What we've done is different protocols. We have made sure that employees not covered by ESI are covered under group insurance, because we will have a bunch who are above that ESI limit. We make sure they are well protected, that they're covered by insurance. We don't have a case tomorrow of somebody who's test positive and is not covered. The cost of COVID treatment is anywhere between 3 lakhs to 15 lakhs, and the cost of coverage is very, very simple. We made sure that if we are dealing with doctors, we are testing every employee every 15 days. The protocol for the doctors themselves is once in 1 week. We say every 15 days, every single employee gets tested, so I know if something's gone right or wrong and how to handle it. We are making sure employees go through thermal scanners, sanitizers, etc. when they come into the hotel. We are making sure there is as few of them that go out and come back every day as practically possible. So we try and accommodate them in the same building itself, minimize the risk of infection. Sanitizers in cafeterias, social distancing in every possible place, including cafeterias. Pre-trade meals in cafeterias that I can pick up and eat in my own corner rather than my having to eat in the cafeteria. We are engaging our guests well before they come into our hotel. So if you have any queries, we're talking to our guests and saying, what can I curate for you? What can I toss up for you? What do you want to order your meals in advance? Of course, from the guests coming in on the mat at the hotel entrance, we're spraying with sodium hypochlorite. So the undersides of shoes get disinfected even before he comes in. Again, thermal scanners, sanitizers. We're in a race to make sure that we can make touchless check-in and check-out available to our customer on a mobile phone rather than him having to stand at the reception desk. Service of guest rooms once a day when the guest is not in the room. We coordinate that with the guest, so there's no turn-down service and there's no repeat entry into rooms. In-room dining, we're happy to leave the tray outside the room if that's what a guest wants. We're happy to leave it inside the room also if he wants, without any interaction with the guest. We put the tray, he leaves it outside for clearance. So those are all the things we're doing. Gloves in areas and housekeeping in kitchens, mask 100% for every employee everywhere at all times. And if you are opening a hotel, let's say after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, it's been shut down for that time, then we're doing UVL fogging and sanitization of the entire premises, front of the house, back of the house, before we open the hotel to our customers. So those are some of the things. But I think more than anything else, we've taken the time to sensitize our staff to say, you need to protect yourselves to be able to protect your customers. So please be careful on both counts. Keep yourself safe. Make sure you're keeping your guests safe. We have videos of what we're actually doing in our hotels that we share with our guests at point of time of reservations coming in. So the overall feeling has to be reassuring your guests that when they're walking into your hotels, they can really feel safe and they're happy. I think Taj has a long history of taking care of communities, of caring for communities, of bringing in everything that for the long term makes sure that employees are safe, make sure obviously that your customers are safe. Any special initiatives that Taj is taking as the Tata Group in your hotels? Anything you want to talk about?
About employee care, did you say, Ajay? Did you say towards employee care?
Tata's has long, employee care, community care, extra precautions for the customers.
Right. So I think I think it was last week, Indian Hotels, our parent company, across all the brands under the umbrella, had released a service protocol, which Ajay pretty much sums up a lot of the principles that you covered in what you just spoke about. Employee first, so that they in turn are able to serve customers well. So I think that is something that has, like most of the other hotel chains are in place, and is also being that during this time we are also training colleagues across. And just to step a little away from hospitality for a second, and maybe to just add some difference to the conversation. So the Tata Group as such is doing a couple of initiatives even in terms of setting up hospitals. Some of my colleagues in Tata Projects have done a fantastic job. I don't know if you caught it in the press, but setting up, the quarantine centers with the necessary support in terms of oxygen, ventilators, etc., has been done. So in terms of setting up hospital facilities, also in terms of supplying PPEs, at a very nominal cost, is something that the group is engaged with. Is also looking at how do you bring down the cost of testing and how do you increase the speed to between the test to getting the results so that you can cover larger people, because I think like Suhail said, this is going to be around for a while. So the idea is that how can you kind of test quickly and share those results. So I know the group is under Mr. Banwali Agarwal has kind of listed various initiatives. One is diagnosis, second is healthcare facilities, and of course care for doctors, quarantine that we in the hotel sectors have been doing, but also in the space of like PPEs is something that I think they're working on to get a solution which you can supply across the country and provide it where required at good quality, and you don't have any risk in using that kind of PPEs. So that's really what the group is completely engaged with. Specific in Ginger's case, like you also mentioned, and I think it was Suhail, sorry, who talked about some level of anxiety in the team, which is quite natural. We all have young teams. I'm talking about our colleagues in the front line. So you could have parents also reaching out to understand what's the service protocol you're going to follow, and is their child's health going to be of paramount importance to the company. So those were conversations we had to deliberate, and very early, I think even Ibis was among one of the early hotels that back in Aerocity or Delhi that got kind of identified. So similarly for us at Ginger Bhubaneswar, I remember on 19th March, we were all just wrapping our head around what's going on, and then we get this notification that you guys have to look at quarantine rooms, and then you're looking at how many staff do I left in the hotel, how do I talk to the team, what is the service protocol. So I must say it's not like we knew the answers with hitting the road running. A lot of it has been discovery, and that discovery process is about being more conscious and conservative first, so that since it's an experience which is the first time, it's better to be really safe. So that's really how we kind of approached it and started this whole journey. And once we had clarity, and once we started this theme on training Tuesdays, we got a lot of the best is when you hear from another hotel manager, how what are the service protocols they're following, how they're taking care of employees. And while we did have some external speakers and our own corporate colleagues talking them through, but we brought in some of those who are out there in the field and handling it day in and day out. So I think that's really how we kind of reached out to our colleagues. We have about 860 colleagues right now housed in our hotels, across our hotels presently. So we're caring for them, and they in turn for the guests that they service. So I thought, picking up from my experience there, I thought I'd just have a hear from Sameer. How did you kind of, like, I'm sure you have a lot of people staying at home. Like, as I mentioned, we have about 860 in the field, but we do have a lot of hotel teams also at home. Not your typical corporate regional team members, but I'm talking about people in operations are also sitting at home. And there's been a certain life of a certain pace, and they're always on the floor, they're on their feet. And anything you'd like to share be interesting for me to know, and how do you keep engagement going with your operations team who's sitting at home that are used to being on their feet and on the floor?
So you're right. I think this has been very different for almost everybody around us. I mean, how many of us would have imagined working from home 50 days on a go? And most of us are probably used to being on the road 20 days a month, and shifting from that situation of 20 days a month on the road to probably thinking of when was the last flight I took, and it's a really long time back. So I guess life has changed a lot for all of us on this call speaking. At the same time, for our colleagues at the front line in the hotels, life has changed equally as much, because either they are sitting at home hoping the hotels will open soon and they get back into the thick of action, or like you mentioned, in many of our hotels also, we have colleagues who are staying in-house, who are either staying in-house and just taking care of the hotel, which is currently under suspension of operations, or taking care of the guests with the limited operations we are running in certain locations. So yes, definitely a fairly big change, I must say. If I look at it, I think all of us have had to adapt to change, including us. Most of us were not used to working from home, doing video calls and meetings. So many of us are so used to meeting in offices, having a chat face to face, and that comfort is a lot more in that. So I guess as we have made adjustments, so do our teams, and they have responded very well, I must say. I think one big fact is exactly like you mentioned, they're a lot younger than us and probably a lot more adaptable than us. So probably that's gone in their favor as well. I guess the other couple of things which I would say has been done very well by our team is to start off with, our corporate HR team has started or had started this 8 weeks back of reaching out to hotels, connecting with hotels, engaging with the leaders to make sure that teams are sorted, because there were two things we wanted to do. One was to understand if everybody is safe and sound, not just the colleagues, but their families as well. And the second one was to also make sure that we are keeping them engaged. So I think that was the two parts which our corporate HR teams did fairly well. And I must say, a lot of effort over the last 8 weeks. And the other part was the hotel teams, the general managers also adapted very well, getting people to do team calls, getting people to do team activities, not only purely focused on work. So they went through looking at SOPs, etc. So there were task forces created for various things. I think that's a good one, which our general managers did. And to add on to that, I would say, of course, we have an online training tool. So getting people to spend more time online going through training programs, because that was one of the challenges which typically anybody in operations says, I don't have time to train my people. So I think this was also probably one of the positives of being locked in. So I guess that's what we went through over the last few weeks. Of course, in the last couple of weeks specifically, a lot of effort has been in preparing the teams to get ready for the hotels to open. And like Mr. Bakaya mentioned, and you mentioned as well, I guess all of us have put in some sort of protocols for safety and hygiene. We all have different ways of calling it. We call it Fortune Safe Stays. We have put in a full 10-area protocol around safe stays and making sure all the elements are covered, whether it is guests or employees or logistics providers. We have, of course, gone into also an ISO level certification around the quality management system. So just to make sure that the rigor doesn't get lost out. But I guess everybody is doing it in some shape or form. And I think that's something which I would say is credible from an industry standpoint, that everybody has responded to it very quickly. If you look at the last 2-3 weeks, pretty much all of us have come up with various programs we've launched to make sure that we're doing whatever we can as responsible operators in the industry. So I guess that's to a lot of credit of all the leaders in the industry and the teams, of course, who have been very engaged in implementing it. So I think that's one. And probably to take a lead onto this, I'll probably want to understand from Nikhil, given that some of us or most of us in this group are predominantly domestic operators, of course, apart from you and Accor. So how would you look at it, given that you probably had a lot of learnings from other countries where you operated in, bringing in protocols on safety, hygiene, also given the fact that you predominantly operate in a franchise model, how's that going to pan out with you and your portfolio?
Interesting question, Samir. So every brand has its own campaign. We have one which is called Count on Us, putting safety first. So not that I'm going to tom-tom about it, but the genesis and the genesis actually is from Southeast Asia, where it started, because they were ahead of the curve. The protocols are detailed when it comes to operations, when it comes to commercials, and we've reoriented, retrained the team members there on various parameters. So I could go on what we've done on the hygiene perspective, but I think, like you said, it's commendable. Every player has done that. What we need to do and ensure is that the fear of travel really moves away, and there is trust and faith in the traveler that's coming back to us. And you're seeing that with an OTA player, you're seeing that with airlines, you're seeing that with hotel companies. We need to make sure that in India, and especially in economy and mid-scale, whether it's train or buses that people are traveling with, understand the hygiene, understand social distancing, and that is what is going to be the game changer in this country at least. So that's my 2 bit on hygiene. There is a lot of talk that international brands are actually doing of technology and bringing in technology. That's the other piece. You're hearing Indian aggregators talking about, touchless check-ins, touchless checkouts, and you're going to hear more and more about that from international players because they have already started implementing it in parts of the world. Our sister concern Wyndham Destinations last week in US has actually started curbside check-in. So you get a key on the curbside. You don't even come to the reception. All details fed in. Your RFID details are with you, and you go straight to the room. So that is going to be the focus for most international brands, whether it's with their loyalty or without their loyalty. But that is what most international brands are looking at. So I'm actually going to twist this question to Suhail and ask him what's his view on technology, and are they looking at Fern to enable technology in any which way?
So actually, right in the beginning of this crisis, the first thing I said is that technology is going to be a game changer right now. Immediately going into the crisis, we realized that your access to data in hotels is relatively limited. Once the hotels shut down, all our systems are unit based. We don't have access to those without really getting into the unit. So just before, actually about a year ago, we made a move to move all our softwares in the hotels to cloud. We completed about 30% of the inventory that we have. So we've got access to that 30%. But I think the driving force has to be going forward to move all hotels onto a cloud-based platform. On the cloud-based platform, we've already started with keyless, as in check-ins, remote check-ins that can happen. Okay, you've got a lot of other facilities that can easily be plugged into that to allow for complete seamless integration of technology. Now, it has to be the key. I don't think any chain going forward can say that I'm going to do this without technology. That is really the driving force behind it. I think other technologies like revenue management technologies and things may take a little bit of a backseat, considering that we don't have enough revenue to do management of that right now. But actual product technologies which have been languishing in hospitality for very long, our PMS systems, even the loyalty systems in the hotel are quite outdated. So those kind of softwares will definitely change for the better. So that's where we're going with regards to technology. It's going to be a long process. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but it's something that is definitely taking priority right now to get changed. Another challenge that I see is, Sylvian, as this is to you as well. I know you all come from an international, both you and Nikhil come from an international background, doing a lot of hotels, both in India as well as outside. But you've seen some recovery in the countries outside. India's had one of the harshest lockdowns compared to most of the countries. Going forward, do you really think that India is competitive to target that 28 million outbound travelers as domestic travelers, to convert them to domestic travelers? What do you think that India really needs to do to further strengthen its domestic travel setup? Because really going forward, that's the key for success in the country. Our domestic tourism has to be the focus, which has come out from most of these conferences as well. So what do you think India really needs to do to focus on that domestic?
To answer first on your questions, well, the domestic market is still representing 80% for us. I will say mainly for the economy market, and we don't see we need first the clarity on the domestic, the movement between state, region, starting to see our companies, our active companies in India that will compete with the rest of the world by moving already inside the country before to get international business. I think probably the airport hotel, when the international movement will restart, will be the first to kick off, because people will stay in the hotel, do their meeting in the hotel, and fly back. But I think we are not yet on this. And coming back to the discussion, the preparation of the hotels, as Deepika was saying, middle March, end of March, when we got Ibis as a Delhi as a first hotel quarantine, voilà, it was you go in or you don't, and it was really an extreme amazing work from the team to prepare and to understand how to handle this kind of business, putting in place the protocol, the support in a high speed, because it came fast. We were still on the preparation of our contingency plan and mostly on mindset of cost and seeing the business going down. And then we have been dropped like in the pool to advance on this protocol. And I think it has been a real great point on best practice for the full portfolio of Accor. And I guess, as Deepika was saying, for some colleagues also all around and different ground and different group. But coming back on this, all along the first focus, and I think Ajay was talking about this, if you want to welcome back the guests, because finally our job is not changing. We are still taking care of people. We will still take care of their safety, and it has been this from a long time in hospitality. So this will not change. We just need to make sure that our team is ready with I will say, the new normal, and how they will be ready to give this trust, because the factor of trust will be the most important during the coming weeks, and to make sure that the business restart. And I think we have a common responsibility on this, because if one of us is failing, automatically the hospitality will get a kick on this. So we will need to be all on the same track. So the connection with the team has been from, I will say, beginning of April already a key point for Accor, making sure that we can assist the team in any kind of difficulties, and you have probably heard that Accor globally, worldwide, put in place all artists fund to support any people in the needs, in the difficulty, that has been used all around the world with the more than 3 lakh of team members that we have. And then after, locally, regionally, we have adapted training, podcasts, to make sure that we keep the connection with the team. Because finally, when you are inside your hotel, when you have, and I have been sitting in AeroCity, when you are inside, when you see what's happened, you are connected and you react fast. When you are staying at home and when you are hearing and looking on all the information, and whatever, when we are talking about reopening or not the hotel on the 8th of June, when you are already operating, you are already on the preparation, you are already advancing on this. If you are disconnected and automatically with an hotel with a shutdown, but then you need to re-prepare the reopening. So this will not work if we are not taking care of the team member, and if we are not focusing on them, on their confidence, because they will have also the dialogue, the terminology in front of the guest. And coming back, well, you was talking about technology. I totally agree, and I'm crazy of technology. I like it, all this robot and contactless, etc. We are all working on this, but I think the main basics, the support that we have already to welcome the guest from the entrance of the hotel until his room, with all our small, simple protocol, because during this time, nobody was open. There was no vendors. All has been done internally. I have seen lots of automatic sanitizer made internally by our hotels. It's crazy, this innovation that has been done internally. And that's what is the all safe label that Accor is implementing. It's not something crazy with difficult technology that we will not be able to implement everywhere, because our owners don't have necessarily also the budget to invest. But it will be more something really simple, a promise of a setup minimum that you can find all around worldwide. And this could be something also taken by the government in India. We have already our protocol that we have received different time. We have received a first draft, a second draft. And I think it's interesting to see and to focus on this, mainly in terms of basics again, to make sure that we are all taking this responsibility to keep the guests safe, because it's what we do, by the way. Another point I want to bring Ajay, inside Suel, you was talking about the difficulty also, all our talents. I think in economy market, we all have the chance to be much more agile than big properties, big mice, big 5-star hotels. But I know Ajay is also like me, really human touch mindset, and we know that we will lose some talents and good talents. So Ajay, how you will organize with Salva on this?
Thank you, Sylvan. I'll come to that. I just want to share something with the entire audience on how do we bring domestic customers. So I know that the Hotel Association of India and probably along with the FHRI is working right now on a campaign which ties in with the Government of India campaign that says in Hindi, "Dekho apna desh," or loosely translated, "Explore your country" or "Explore India." So we are planning a campaign that will go on to print media and social media fairly soon. On the issue, Sylvan, that you've raised on human talent, I think the single largest challenge before us, much more than the business that we're looking at bringing in and getting out going, is how do we handle people who are not going to be earning a living, or not going to be earning a living as they have in the last few months or year. Now, we've talked of several options. We've talked about salary cuts, and we propose that along the line across the board. We've talked about leave without pay, or furlough as we call it. Now, leave without pay sounds okay for a month, maybe two. Beyond that, there's no money coming into my kitty, so it doesn't really make me feel very happy that I'm still employed, but I have no money coming in. So, and also leave without pay has to be mutual and has to be for a finite period of time. It can't be indefinitely without pay. What do we do in situations where we know that we're not going to have business for 3 months, 6 months, perhaps the best part of the year? Not going to have normal business. What do we do in situations where we had very large banquets, where we were dependent on wedding revenues, and all of a sudden banquets of 500 or 1,000 now go to banquets of no more than 50 people. So it is inevitable that despite all that we do, and despite all the salary cuts, etc., that we take, there's going to be a certain number of people that will no more be employed by us. And I think that goes across the board. I'm just being very, very, very candid. I think it's best to speak about these things than not to speak about them. And it's an issue that has to be handled with extreme sensitivity. You are going to have economic problems, financial problems, you're going to have physical problems, you're going to have mental health problems of people who are exposed to food that they haven't seen, they haven't decided, they haven't dreamt of for a long time. And our approach is, okay, A, try to retain as many as you can by deeper salary cuts, as much as you can. B, talk to people honestly, talk again and talk again and talk again, and expose yourself rather than hiding and rather than sending off memos and notes and saying this is what's happened or this is what you're doing. And we have found that when we've spoken to our people, they have been receptive, they have been warm, they have been understanding. Some people will go through terribly difficult situations, and I think it's imperative upon us to keep counseling them, to make sure that we have an ear for them, and to make sure that we handle this with as much of sensitivity as is possible. So that's our approach. But I think we're looking at a very serious problem, and we're looking at a very serious social problem. It's not just a hotel or hospitality problem; it's a problem across the board. We're looking at lakhs and lakhs of millions of jobs not being available to people. And we are not in a country where they can go to social security benefits or where the state is going to support it. We have a scenario where we have to be then looking out for the next best option, and there are tough times. So I think the answer is sensitivity. The answer is communicate, even if it's bad news. Communicate face to face rather than any other way. I don't know if you have time for another question, but I want to throw something small and simple at Deepika. Going back to February of 2020 and going back to how things were at that point of time, how deep is the shock and how shattering is what you see now compared to what it was at that time?
Well, that caught me by surprise, Ajay. But anyway, so you know, we were actually looking at just to tell you a little bit about what we had on the cards for the first quarter. We were looking at hotel openings that were to happen. We were looking at some of our we are also getting engineers to earlier offer our F&B space along with a fully equipped kitchen to partners to run for us. Last year we began running F&B under our cafe etc. concept on our own. So we had a lot of those F&B launches in restaurants planned. So cut to February, we were actually thinking by this time we would have opened 3 hotels. We would have launched our cafe etc. concept in more hotels. So yeah, so it's amazing how things can change in a very, very short window of time. We kept reading in the news, I think most of us, that a lot of this was happening in Jan, Feb, and like Samir, I'm also in a group where within my parent company there are brands in the luxury and upper upscale, so you closely hear it every day in terms of what impact is happening. And I think first it was felt in these segments before it trickled down to us in the mid-scale and economy. So didn't really think honestly that it would come so big and so fast. I mean, we just saw business flying out of the books and occupancy just crashing. So yeah, but actually this time Ginger should have had 3 more hotels open, and we should have had more cafes etc. welcoming guests. So it's unfortunate that those things haven't happened, but I'm sure there will be a place and time for that. Like Nikhil was saying, that I think as a lot of us as leaders do believe that the future is difficult presently, will continue, but then the journey is going to go up. The question is how fast, how quick, what degree is the slope going to be, but it's only going to get better. We all know it. If you look at a March 4th week occupancy and you look at your May 4th week occupancy, there is difference. There is a definite amount of improvement, and we've got to hold on to that, and we've got to build on that. That's really what I think. And with that, Samir, I just wanted to understand. I know that Fortune, unlike the ITC brand, does probably entirely management contract deals, and most of your portfolio, entirely your portfolio, is under management contract. So how does talent mobility work? You know, and especially like, is there something that you're looking at in terms of big ticket? Because I remember Mr. Chandra, when he was addressing us, said something which was very meaningful about never waste a crisis. So there is a lot of opportunity in our present situations where you can question the things that you probably took as an assumption or something that always existed, etc. So I don't know how it really is between Fortune and ITC, but for instance, is something like talent mobility something that you can explore across hotels that you have in Fortune, say, to Ajay's point, in terms of we all, so that jobs are secured for the longest runway possible. Is talent mobility something you can look at between, say, across between Fortune to ITC and the other way around? Does that happen?
So I would say while we have been running 2 very different set of brands for a very long time, one of the things we have definitely started, and I would say it's not just because of the current situation, we actually started that a couple of years ago, of trying to look at how we can move talent between the systems. So there has been already some progress in that, of saying how do we move talent between systems. Clearly started with working on cross exposure opportunities for some of our colleagues to move from one brand to another brand. Given that it's a very large setup, I think there is a lot more we can do. It's such a brilliant opportunity, and it does happen in many companies who offer multi-brand portfolios. So it's not unique to either of our companies. I think many other companies already do it. So definitely that's something which I would say most companies can benefit with, given that exactly as Mr. Bakaya mentioned, talent is probably the most precious asset we all have. And also apart from that, there is going to be a lot of stress through the system over the next few months. So definitely, I think while our if I look externally, while our consumers, our customers are still very cautious, they're still trying to take a wait and watch approach. There are definitely a lot more things we can do internally. Protecting jobs is probably only one part of that, but it's also about how do we engage our colleagues, how do we make sure that we are all in it together. And I guess that's what we will have to do as well. So Nikhil, I know you have probably missed your foreign travels quite a bit. You want to tell us when you're traveling out next?
Hopefully soon enough, Samir. Hopefully soon enough. But to your point, you know, and Mr. Bakaya is the fittest, I think, at least in the panel. And Mr. Bakaya, allow me to call out your 100-kilometer cycling last week. Truly something to look forward to. And I couldn't help thinking, but the past tense of fit today is actually fat. And there is no two ways that organizations aren't going to get leaner. They are going to get leaner. It is a reality of life. In our positions, we need to make sure that whatever mental support we could give those organizations, those employees, is passed on. So at Wyndham, our L&D team has actually been very busy with the current set of people who are in and the current set of people who are not in the system, and trying to do various wellness initiatives for our franchisees, for the team members of Wyndham. And that is something that we should be cognizant of, because it's extremely important. Mass unemployment is a reality that we are going to be facing, at least in the short term, in our industry. And whatever little we can do to enhance it or to improve it for our colleagues. So that's my only 2 bit there. Suhail, any last thoughts on this?
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, we do have to be ready for a certain level of unemployment, and it's not only the hospitality sector. I think it's going to spread across India. So India does have the highest youth population in the world, and unemployed youth is never a good scenario to be in. So let's just hope that we can bounce back quickly from this and find jobs for everyone in the country. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, Sylvain, would you like to have some last words before we go to the questions?
Thank you, Prince, to let me talk a little bit to wrap up a bit this point. Just a positive point on what Suhail was saying. And to conclude what I was asking to Ajay, I think we will have lots of great talents to rehire very soon. Because, by the way, there will be some people also on, you call it here, natural attrition. Some people will not want to come back to work for the moment. They will want to take a few months to think about this, spending time with the family, etc. So I think there will be also some changes in the way we recruit, probably some part-time. Changing a bit the way we organize our structure, and it will be a new era for the recruitment. Just another point also important, when I was talking about the responsibility of everyone, we will have a responsibility on the pricing, and the pricing stress, the pressure will be part of the coming weeks business, and we will need to have the attention on this. We know by previous crises, we know that going down on the price is absolutely not good, and we take more time after to recover. So we will need this solidarity between brands, between categories. We don't play in the same way. By the way, we know that economy business is also the most agile to transform the low rates. So it will be an important point. And to finish, just before the question, if there is, I think that for all of us, the familiarity, the trust that all the guests have in our brands, all our brands, will be the game changer for the coming weeks. People will need to come back to their brands. They will need to come back to a name they remember. They will test us as well to see if we are on the level that they expect. But they will come back to Wyndham. They will come back to Fern. They will come back to Ginger. They will come back to us for sure, and to Ibis as well. But they will come back to the brand that they like. It will be yeah. I'm talking about Ginger. Yeah. Good point. So this will be, I think, the game changer for the coming weeks. The loyalty of our guests, and they will start automatically with us. Bire, I give you back the mic.
Yes, thank you very much. And it was a fantastic chat, and I think we could have kept on going, but time is limited and we have to keep everything nice and crisp. So now is the time for getting the questions. We've had a lot of questions, so let's begin with the first question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and collate some of the questions, because in some places we have got questions which are already been answered in some way. So one of the questions which Mr. Ashutosh is asking, Mr. Ashutosh is from Bonnie Sons, of course, and he's asking is, where do you see the implementation of technology most effectively in the hotels? Now, I want to add to that question because someone else has asked, when we are looking at technology, obviously that means a cost. And when we are going forward, we are looking at hotels which will be allowed to do only 10, 15, 20, maybe 30% occupancy. And in the budget and economy sector, if we are looking at budget and mid-scale and we're looking at low occupancies, how are we going to deal with the cost of more technology coming in? I think we should begin with Ajay from the beginning. Same sequence.
Thanks, Vikram. Thank you very much. Well, it's a good. Everybody wants the technology, and not everybody has the money to pay for it. So the answer is for the technology provider and the hotel. You got to break it down to what's really your high priority, or what's high priority for the customers. So at this point of time, I would say the first thing really for me is the touchless check-in, check-out. Can I manage that? And I'm happy to pay some sort of a price for that. But if I get a package which says touchless, plus order your menu, plus this, plus that, blah, 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 at a much higher price, I'm saying, look, sorry, I don't need all of that stuff right now. Give it me as an option. I think the answer is that you break up the technology part into smaller modules that are all available at a certain price. There be an a la carte choice for the player to choose what he wants to offer, what he wants to perhaps leave for a later day as an optional. That's the good answer. Yes, we do need the technology, undoubtedly. And yes, cost is going to be a question mark. If we can't pay our people, if we have people losing jobs, you can't pay the banks, you have trouble with your suppliers. Where is the cash flow coming from? So it has to be prudent use of technology on both sides, prudent marketing and prudent buying. Okay?
Thank you. Deepika, you and Samir come from companies which have lots of money or can raise lots of money. So what new technologies are there on your wish list? Lots of money.
Sorry?
I'm saying Sylvain also has a company with a lot of money.
Right. No, so, each organization is unto itself. I think each organization has to cut its cloth as per its means, and it doesn't matter if you're a part of a larger parent or a conglomerate. I think that that is the expectation of us. So I completely concur with what Ajay is doing. We would pick and choose, and I can share if any of the panelists want to know some of the products we're looking at which enable that, because interestingly, none of these have any development costs. The initial cost, which normally, if it's something that's designed for you, you will be lumped with some development costs. So there are some off-the-shelf products which work on an OpEx model, and those work, and in those as well use technology like MS Forms as the back-end infrastructure on which it's being done. You don't need to immediately spend again on interfacing with PMS. It works through a nice notification. So it's a bit of a band-aid job in the world of technology, but when you are treading slowly and cautiously, I think it works because you can deliver that check-in, check-out, and even IRD quite seamlessly and not have any upfront capital investment. So a similar approach, what Ajay said, and there is a product we have zeroed in on, and we've actually finished the trial period and are going live with it. So it isn't follows all those principles of not burning too much cash upfront, and just goes on a very simple, low cost per room model. You can choose how many hotels to onboard and on it also, so you don't have to do the whole thing. You can focus on your focus hotels and then try. So that's how I would make those choices on technology investment.
So I'll pick on from here. I'll first just quickly touch on your perception of our companies and our ability to do things, right? So I'll say, like the typical marketer says, perception is reality. I'll leave it at that and leave you to imagine as much as you would like to. But having said that, I think while there are different levels of capital available to different parts of the company, and I might just look at it in two sort of angles. One is, of course, at ITC Hotels, given the customer profile, given the expectation of the customer and the propensity to pay, there will always be a few things which are done additionally, because that's the segment we are targeting in from an ITC Hotels perspective. And then if I bring us back to the segment we are playing in, which is the mid-scale to the upscale, which is where Fortune plays in. I guess there are a couple of things we would need to be very, very conscious of. One is exactly as Mr. Bakaya said, it's not just about trying to bring in technology irrespective of how much it costs, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that there's a reasonable return on investment, without which we are having to take some of those tough calls of how many jobs should we protect before we even go and invest money, and what do we do. Hence, even when we looked at the Safe Stays program at Fortune Hotels, we were very clear. We wanted to first focus on every element of the stay, which can be implemented in a fairly easy manner, because apart from the cost, while technology is great, let's be realistic. There are many companies out there talking about technology, but they're all in various stages of testing, piloting, etc. So by the time we get through some of those solutions, roll it out over the system, it might be a longer time. So that is one. The second is, let's not forget the original premise of why we're getting to this, because we are a very high touch industry in general. You know, hotels are very high touch, especially in India and this part of Asia. So as much as you would have seen international companies coming in and trying to do what worked very well in Europe, they've also had to make changes from their smart service concept or limited service concept, and they've had to bring in additional service into the systems here. So that's the reality of the customer here, who expects high touch points. So what we used to talk about as moments of truth might have changed to moments of trust. Having said that, I think it's critical that we remember that all the stress we are going through is because of the fear of the unknown and the unpredictability. That's probably going to last for 12, 15, 24 months, by which time a vaccine will come. And many of the things we're talking about today might not even be spoken about. So yes, people talk about new normal, but I guess it's interim normal. So having said that, I think we need to take it with a little more of a pragmatic approach. Yes, we definitely need to look at technology. How do we become more efficient? How do we make it easier for guests to have a great experience? And that's where I would stop at. I'm happy to let Nikhil add on to it if you have any.
Nikhil, do you want to add?
If you have...
let's just be flexible, as we've been said that, you know, the economy and budget is the flexible part of the hotel chain. So let's be flexible. And I think I'm going to ask one question, one person, otherwise we'll continue having a Q&A to be
Absolutely.
as big of this panel. So I have a question here for Ajay. And it is, what do you think the revenues may look like in the next 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year down the line? And what revenues do you think will be the maximum hit in the hospitality in the budget and mid-scale? I mean, this is like the question which will take you 3 hours to answer, but
no, it won't. The first question is how are revenues going to look 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the line? The answer is nobody has a clue. I certainly don't. Vikram, we need to still wait and watch a whole lot of things. You know, our state border is actually going to open. Am I going to be able to sit on the road and drive comfortably? Our flight schedule is going to kickstart. Are people going to trust those things? So honestly, I've been saying this for a while, and I say this now. November, December, if I do 50% occupancy across the board in my hotels, I'm a very happy man. Normally, November, December, I would have done anywhere between 80, 85, perhaps higher. If I do a 50, I'm happy. Your second part of the question was what revenue is going to be most hit? Easy answer. Number one, banquets. Number two, restaurants. And they're going to be hit with a ton of bricks. And there are some answers there, some possible potential answers. Again, still early days. But one is deliveries that all of us are working on right now. Two is the potential. If you have large kitchens and not enough business to convert part or all of those kitchens into what is called dark kitchens, and you bring in a third party that does only deliveries. They cook and they deliver, they cook and they deliver. Maybe 500,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 meals in a day. All they're doing is delivering. We have fantastic locations. Most dark kitchens are 10 to 20 kilometers outside of the city. We have a client base. We have high density populations around us. So I think there are opportunities there. And who knows? It's it's still in the future, but who knows? We may be converting our banquet halls into office spaces in the foreseeable future. So I don't have any crystal gazing answers right now, but I think it's a tough road ahead. It's a difficult road ahead. There will be challenges, and this is not something that's going to fix itself in the next 3 to 6 months.
Nikhil, I have a question for you. Now, we have already touched the question of employment, but there's someone who's asked, what is your insight for job losses, especially in the franchisee model, and how are you going to deal with it?
What is the insight? So, like I said, I mean, it's a reality, right? The writing's on the wall. When there is no revenue, people are going to lose their jobs. What we can do as organizations is try and support that in the interim. So I can tell you what we have done at Wyndham. We've set up an agency to help you create your CV. In other parts of the world and in India, we're trying to do that similar. We're trying and do tie-ups with hospitals and with retail segments and push these CVs to those organizations, because those service sectors do need people. Yes, it's not hotels, but it is a job, and that's the kind of environment that we are trying to build in and around, and that's what my appeal was in the earlier point. Vikram, just to close that point, every organization is going to be frugal going forward, and I'm going to borrow words from Deepika. You have to earn the right to ask. So that's where we all of us are going to be, international or domestic.
Okay, Suhail, the question that I need to ask you is, there's someone who's told us that, that all the panelists are talking about the fact that all the hotels have been doing a lot of things for touchless technologies and adopting, new technology, new SOPs. Now, as someone who's going to be a frequent traveler, how do you assure the traveler that you're doing what you agreed to? That it's actually happening, and so that they're happy and they think, okay, we have been assured that the cleanliness is going to be at the level. So what are you guys doing to monitor the the SOPs and the technology?
Absolutely. What we've said categorically to all our general managers is that safety and hygiene of both our employees and our guests is #1 priority. So effectively, to monitor this, a lot of things have been set up. We've already done, to communicate this first, we've already done videos, we've created a staging program, we've got detailed SOPs sent out to each hotel for every single department, whatever changes are need to be done. For things like checklists, what we're actually doing, and which is actually also part of the government requirements for hotels, is they want us to display publicly as to a checklist for each area, when it's been cleaned, at what time it's been cleaned. So that's already in process. Behind all the room doors, we're looking at putting a checklist to tell the guests when this room was cleaned. Apart from that, external agencies are being looked at currently to do an audit of hotels that will be able to as well certify the hotel as hygiene standard levels.
Okay, thank you. Sylvain, I have a question for you, which is that could you forecast what kind of job roles will be getting streamlined in the months to come? How are you going to streamline, because there'll be less people? How are you going to streamline your job roles in the hotel?
I don't know if you want to let me talk, right? You want to take me out some.
We're talking.
So,
Perfect.
yeah, I was answering to this before. The natural attrition, the sector of people who don't want to come back to work, the different kind of support on leave without pay, organization of part-time, etc. This is all the kind of solution that we are already talking from a few months, and this will support what is happening today. Me, I'm quite happy to see that finally, with the operation running in globally all the properties that we have around India, when we are talking about a skeleton in the hotel, the skeleton is nearly a full team. We don't have too many people who are outside. For the moment, the people are mainly those who was going out of the state to find their family when we was giving some leaves in the beginning. So this will be, I think Suel was talking about this, how we bring back this team to be ready at the same time. I just want to come back on one point, but it's linked also with what the team can do, and we will need, by the way, kind of part of the team, because everything we are doing now and all the new normal will take a bit more time, will take a bit more sanitation, will be different. We are, of course, increasing the in-room dining. We know that our restaurant will change. When we was profiting of all this buffet, big or small, that everybody was doing self-service, we will be much more on the care and service on table, preparing some pre-portioning, etc. So this is part of the thing where the team will be important. And to link, we need also to be careful on which level we are going. When we talk about technical or innovation, of course the contactless is coming, and there is some solution, even free solution on this. The payment was already existing, but not so much used. Now it will be used more. Contactless menu was already existing with all the aggregators. Now it will come in the hotels. I think the technology will be more also on the support of sanitation, support of thermometer, on this kind of things, because we need some, I will say, some medical support in the hotel with a few technology. But this will not cost a bit. And we have, if we can call it a technology, there is also some support tools existing worldwide, and we are using a small tool that called iAuditor with all our hotels in Accor, where you are doing your own audit online, and you can take photos, you can really follow some guidelines, SOP, and this will support also making sure that we are standardized, that we are on the same level of safety measure in all the properties. So the importance of the team, and finally the technology not going too far, because we will give also too much expectation by putting too many setup in place.
So thank you very much, and thank you to my panel. I would like to end this by saying, when before we went online, Ajay told us that people think we have nothing better to do than be on webinars, and I know that all of you have been very busy. So I want to thank you all to be part of the panel. I know Deepika came in after her board meeting, and everyone has a packed schedule. So thank you very much for taking time out. And we have actually nearly spoken for 1.5 hours, and I don't know where the time has gone. So thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Deepika. Thank you, Sameer. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Suhail. And thank you, Sylvain, for taking so much time out. And thank you to Bonnisons, our sponsor, who are into kitchen technology. And they were trying to ask a question about kitchen technology, but I think generally we know that technology is something that is going to be a differentiator, especially in the budget and mid-scale sector as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a good and safe day.